So springtime is the most exciting time on the Hudson River. I particularly love this time of year because, all the signals are there on land and on water, and when you tune in to what's going on underneath the surface of the river, it's a very exciting thing to think about.
Spring is the time when a lot of animals, birds and fish especially, are on the move in the Hudson River Valley. This is a busy time for wildlife and the people that are interested in their conservation. The river is still actually fairly chilly in temperature, so the vegetation lags behind here in the marsh. So the woodlands are popping out green now, but this vegetation is really controlled by the temperature of the river water. So it's still pretty brown. As the river warms, this marsh will transform in the next month or so to, a very lush kind of green place.
The Hudson River, the lower Hudson River below the Troy Dam, 154 miles, is a tidal estuary. There's an enormous flush of water coming out of the Adirondacks and the Catskills and the adjoining lands, and the ocean water coming up from the mouth of the Hudson River. The mix of that fresh and salt is what makes an estuary an estuary.
I think of the marsh as part of the Hudson River itself, but this is the Hudson River water that we see right here. It's shallow enough where plants can grow, these emergent marshes can grow, and that creates a different type of river habitat or estuarine habitat that is particularly important for breeding birds. Here in Constitution Marsh, there are birds that breed here only in this type of habitat, and they're very specific to these big, wet, muddy marshes. But they're vulnerable because they are specific only to this habitat. That's why we need to be paying attention to them. They don't have the ability to move to a different type of habitat.
This is the time of year when the American shad are migrating up to the freshwater reaches of the river to spawn. It's part of a very long journey they make. They've spent the winter out in the ocean, and the shad that were hatched here return to the Hudson River to spawn. And it's part of an amazing piece of ecological choreography, because shad follow their ideal water temperature. They're off the coast of Florida in the wintertime. They're in the Bay of Fundy in the summertime, because that's where it's cool enough for them. But then as they migrate in that big route, they break off from the main population, and the fish that were hatched here come up here to spawn. American shad are not the only fish that are getting lively now. Striped bass, of course, which is a very important recreational fishery on the Hudson River. In a few weeks, Atlantic sturgeon will start swimming up the Hudson River to spawn as well. And a few weeks after that, the blue crab will start getting active in the Hudson River. One of the sad things that is not happening is that we don't have a commercial shad fishery anymore. The commercial fishery for American shad is closed on the Hudson now, has been for 2 years. It's the first time in the history of the fishery it's ever been closed. So although we can stand by the water and see where the water seemingly ends and the shoreline begins, it's all part of one large ecosystem, one large watershed that affects all of our lives because the animals on land affect our lives, create the balance of the ecosystem we live in, the trees, the flowers, and then the river itself. So we have to watch out for it if we're going to watch out for ourselves.
But new issues are always coming up, and the idea of conservation is something that always has to be in front of us. It's like a job that's never really done.